And hello, everyone. Greetings from in Uni UK. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Degina Bedril, and I'm the Director of Recruitment within in Uni UK Division, a company of global university systems overseeing international students recruitment for a number of our UK partner universities. Today, I'm extremely excited to talk about our premium partner university, beautiful Canterbury Christchurch University in the Garden of England in Kent. And we will be specifically covering MBA and MSc International Business programs available at CCCU in May. So that's really exciting development. We have May intake coming up very, very soon, starting on 27th of May. And we're already accepting applications, issuing offers. In fact, if you are a student or you do have students already prepared with the full package of documents, they should be submitting them via GAS Gateway at the soonest, and they would be able to secure their CAS letter and apply for their visa in February, just to avoid any delays with visas, and they would be able to start their program in May itself. Anyway, I'm really excited to be joined by my colleagues from the university itself. So we have Professor Richard McManus, who is the course director for business programs at CCCU. We have Richard Venner, who is International Business Development Manager at CCCU. And I also have my colleagues from in uni marketing team, Sukane and Chinks, helping us to run this webinar today. Just a few housekeeping rules before we start. You're all on mute. If you'd like to ask any questions whatsoever, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A section. So that's Q&A section rather than chat section. And we will take your question at the very end of the webinar. So I really hope you can stay with us till the end. Other than that, sit back and enjoy. And we really hope you find this webinar useful and inspiring. The webinar is also being recorded, and the recording will be shared with you later on in case if you miss anything. Thank you. And it's over to you, Professor Richard.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much for that introduction. As I said, my name is Professor Richard McManus, and I've worked at Christchurch now for coming on for 12 years. I would like to say there are people that work for Christchurch that are not called Richard. But yes, sorry, it's just because the examples you have. So I'm here, as Degina said, to talk about our MSc, our postgraduate provision effectively within the business school orientated around business. That includes two core courses, the MBA International and the MSc International Business. And I really kind of just want to get across the kind of punchlines of the presentation to kind of give you the opportunity to engage when you want. But I think the main things I kind of want to put across today is the sort of transformative experience that a lot of our students experience whilst at Christchurch. I've been thinking, I always, whenever I'm preparing for these presentations, think about my own master's experience many years ago now. But a lot of it was, almost all of it's made by the people that sort of surrounds that student experience. And although a lot of the personalities are, of course, the lecturers, significant people involved within the study experiences, your fellow students. And I think we're really lucky at Christchurch to recruit phenomenal staff, really exceptional staff, and phenomenal students. And that's what makes the experience, I think. A lot of the studying higher education in the UK, a lot of it is self-study. It's not all in the classroom and so on. And having that ability to work with other students who are like-minded, who are aspirational, ambitious, that kind of want to learn and kind of get through the course and sort of develop their understanding of international business. That's what is really quite useful. And it's to some extent serendipitous. I don't know how we recruit such wonderful staff and wonderful students other than through working through partners such as yourself. But yeah. And I largely see our role as staff in the sort of higher education process to facilitate learning. We're here to guide students through, but particularly when we get to postgraduate, a lot of the learning has to come from your own experience, your own reflections, and your kind of own time. And it's that framework and that support mechanisms that get built through the people involved, both staff and students, that I think really sort of create that transformational kind of experience. Yeah. And then I think as well, part of the process and part of the things I kind of want to get across now before going into the actual slides is the sort of empathy of all those involved in the delivery at Christchurch, both academic staff and professional services staff, in terms of understanding the international student experience and how that kind of gets implemented in the timetable and so on, and understanding that there are kind of different pressures and commitments on international students, and trying to make sure that we reflect on those, which we do. Okay, so now I'll go through my slides, but yeah. I kind of just wanted to get across that kind of key message, I suppose, is that, you know, like I say, we are phenomenally lucky to recruit such exceptional staff and students. And that's what kind of, for me at least, sets my experience at the university apart, and my studying experience before that. Okay. So here, littered throughout the presentation with pictures of campus. It is, as the keynote said, it's in what's known as the Garden of England. I'm not entirely sure where the name comes from. I think the Garden of England is something that's been around for centuries. I think it helps being in the southeast, so the climate is a bit nicer. So maybe that's why it's Garden of England. But yes, this is on campus. It's between two quite big buildings. It's a campus university, so almost all our buildings are in one site that's walled off from the rest of the city. The other thing that is lovely about it, both as staff and students, is that the campus is very, very close to the city centre. Canterbury's not a massive city, but having that ability to sort of come in and out of town is really quite useful. The weather today does not look like that, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, so in terms of the institution, we're inspired by our Church of England Foundation. The university's mission is to pursue excellence in higher education, transforming individuals, like I was talking about earlier in this transformative experience, creating knowledge and enriching communities and building a sustainable future. And I think, obviously, this is a mission statement, and there's always a bit of ambiguity at how this gets translated. But the team at the university are very kind of keen on these communities, building these communities, and understanding that, like I say, it's the people around our study that make our study to a large extent. Higher education is a very sort of personal transformational process, but it's a personal process that we conduct with others, I suppose. And it's that sort of experience building that I think is really quite useful, at least from my perspective. And I think from speaking to the students as well, their perspective, and to a large extent the staff, you know, we often talk about how we work as a team and how we can improve upon that and kind of develop that teamwork to sort of better suit the student and staff needs. Okay, so our courses are all full-time. As Kina said, we've got a May intake, but we also have January and September intakes. We teach over 3 trimesters, 3 terms, and we have intake allowed to start all the time at any given one of those three time periods. Our students, we have approximately 15,000 students, but they're sort of separated out in other parts. Typically, a sort of 3/4 split for full-time, and then a quarter doing more part-time courses. They're often working, well, they often have full-time work as well, but also possibly doing vocational courses. And we have quite a lot of partnerships, both sort of in the local area, nationally and internationally. And then in terms of the business school, so the international business programs are designed to prepare you to develop your career towards a management role by enabling you to address complex problems that face organizations in today's dynamic international business environment. This is one of the discussions we've been having the past week, actually, is how do we bring out the international component within our courses, right? So our courses are MSc in International Business and MBA International. So obviously international is a key part of what we're trying to do. And of course, the word international can mean so many different things. It can mean your colleagues, the colleagues I work with are very sort of international. It can mean your customers. And even then, the idea of your customers being international, that might mean that you sell 90% of your goods and services domestically and 10% internationally, or just one country, or it could be that it's much more diverse. And kind of playing with this idea of sort of international complex needs and problems, I think can take so many shapes and forms. But despite sort of recent trends towards possibly less sort of international trade amongst countries, I think there still is this kind of shared there's been a convergence, I think, of kind of business issues across different institutions and across different countries. And that kind of gives us a shared understanding of how we embed the sort of international components of this. I think to a large extent, all of business and all of management is at least marginally touched by a sort of international perspective. And I'd say most is almost fully touched by it. And what we're really trying to do is sort of understand that these problems will kind of evolve and develop from those that we kind of talk about today, and those that we might talk about in May, and those that we might talk about throughout the course and beyond. But what we try and do in the courses is develop problem solvers. So the skill is both around framing specific challenges of the day in terms of business environment and the international business environment and so on, but also giving the skills and the agency, I suppose, to be able to try and solve these problems, whatever they might transform to be in your own settings, in your own future, and so on, if that makes some sense. The university was first for graduates and work. So one of the things we have to report on, the UK has quite a significant kind of university reporting structure in terms of statistics, but we have to do what's known as the Graduate Outcome Survey, which goes to the Higher Education Statistics Authority. That's what HESA is. And effectively what that does is it surveys people 18 months after their course and says, what are you doing? How are you spending your time? Is it in employment? Is it in further study, or is it in something else, and so on? And out of the 100 institutions that were reporting last time, Christchurch was first, which is really quite cool. But yes, obviously it has sort of implications for yourselves. Okay, so we've kind of discussed these titles at length, but I should have possibly put this slide sooner. The two main courses we're here to talk about today are the MBA International and the MSc International Business. It should be said, now that I'm just writing it down, the course that is available from June for a May intake, May 27th, is only the MBA International. So I should have said that. For a quirk of the way we've validated our courses, one cannot do the MSc International Business in as a May intake, but you can do the MBA International as a May intake. The MSc International Business you can do as September and January intakes, but yes, formally, the MBA International is the only one you can do as the May intake. I'll come on and discuss the significance of that in a moment in terms of what that means. The other thing to sort of highlight here is these are pre-experienced MBAs. So certainly 30 years ago or so, an MBA was for people who are running, reasonably large organizations, and were for very much sort of the top of the top sort of executives in different countries and so on. This MBA, like a growing number that have sort of come out in the market in the last sort of decade or so, are what's known as a pre-experienced MBA. So there is no requirement on you having a certain number of years of sort of management experience, which you might have in a more sort of traditional kind of, like I say, older style MBA. So yes, many of our students, it should be said, do come with quite a lot of entrepreneurial experience and management experience. We're kind of lucky in that respect, but it is not a requirement. I think what all students tend to come with is some kind of experience that kind of develops class discussions and going back to what I was talking about earlier, develops these kind of student-to-student peer networks that kind of enable more learning. So even if it's sort of part-time work or something like that, the students we recruit tend to have a kind of vast relevant experience, I suppose, is important to something around international business. And then part of the sort of internationalness of our course is set in the internationalness of our student base as well, and kind of discussing different experiences and different reflections from different students from different countries kind of develops that understanding of diversity and international perspectives and so on, that kind of really underpins the course. And that's the same with staff as well. You know, our staff are quite diverse in terms of their international origins and so on, and it just means that we can come to things with very different life experiences that kind of build a kind of shared empathy for each other, and that should hopefully then kind of translate into future kind of careers and progression and so on. Like I say, I don't think you can get around in most cases the kind of international components of business nearly anywhere. I think all business is becoming more international, and therefore kind of having this kind of very kind of dynamic experience within the class discussions and so on, and the reflections and presentations really does sort of help develop that. So the difference between the MBA International and the MSc International Business, forgive me, I only really recalled that the May intake is only for MBA International during talking about that slide, and then I've got myself into a tiz now. But effectively, the MBA International, we reframe or is framed similarly to the MSc International Business, but it's framed from thinking about having that entrepreneurial mindset and thinking about what you kind of conclude your studies on. So a lot of the course here between the MSc and the MBA is shared, because a lot of the requirements and the kind of learning outcomes are similar between an MBA and an MSc in International Business. So you share components on strategy and globalization and kind of management and leadership within that, on finance and economics, and entrepreneurship and innovation. Also areas of culture, communication and marketing, human resources and leadership. The places where the MBA and the MSc diverge is whereas the MSc concludes with a sort of more academic dissertation, dissertations with lots of citations and kind of based on research of others and kind of being much more sort of academically orientated and kind of an extended academic essay, if you like. The MBA concludes with a business plan, sort of constructing an idea for a business that you may wish to take forward. Like, it doesn't have to be a business that you want to implement. It can be purely hypothetical for purposes of the assessment. But yeah, so the sort of orientation of the course is to be much more sort of business minded, and kind of conclude with this idea of taking your learning from the various modules of the course into sort of thinking about starting a business. And like I say, it can be purely hypothetical. I think a lot of students who come to do the MBA do come with an idea of our business that they might quite like to do. A lot of our students, be it on the MBA or the MSc, are quite entrepreneurial. And again, I think that's sort of a growing trend recently, but I guess it could also be cultural in terms of different cultures are more entrepreneurial than others. But in order to prep you for that business plan, the sort of module leading into it is slightly different with this market research. So this market research module in the MBA is sort of framing around and thinking about how we build a case for different businesses and how we kind of research whether there is a kind of need and desire and demand for the sorts of goods and services that we're thinking about developing as part of that kind of entrepreneurial business plan process. Whereas, you know, with the MSc, going into an academic dissertation, the kind of corresponding module is much more around research methods and again more academic. So the MBA and MSc, they're very much overlap with one another, but the MBA's sort of punchline and conclusion is thinking about a business plan and thinking about that sort of potentially going out and being more entrepreneurial at the end. Otherwise, though, the training is still the training, you know. We're thinking about future managers, we're thinking about future problem solvers from an international perspective. And like I say, much of the two courses are very, very similar. It's just this kind of final major project that you conclude with, instead of this sort of academic, sort of quite rigorous, quite linear dissertation approach. In the MBA, you will be doing more of an entrepreneurial business plan with the potential to kind of implement that after you leave. Or, I mean, it could even be a business plan for something that you've started. Like I say, plenty of our students do come with sort of entrepreneurial ideas in mind, and a proportion of them, not an insignificant proportion, have actually sort of started to implement them in any case. So it can actually be to sort of thinking about how to extend that business. In terms of how you'll learn, so this is a picture of the business school building. It's irrelevant, but just on the left there is one of my former offices, and then just on the right of the picture is my first office at the school. But yeah, in terms of how you be taught, quite a lot of blended and flipped learning, by which we mean sort of activities are suggested and asked to be done before one attends. Group seminars and discussions, and then that way that kind of seminar and discussion time can be better utilized with this kind of broad shared understanding, and then we can discuss that shared understanding. What we tend to do, and it will be the case for those of you starting in May, is for each of the modules that we teach, we have a 1 hour online lecture on a Monday. The online component being allowing for people to join from wherever they want. So they can be anywhere. But also the fact that it's online means that it can be recorded, and then people can join whenever they want as well. You don't have to attend live. Obviously, if you want to ask questions and engage in any discussion that occurs during the lecture, you have to attend live. But otherwise, it's online to both allow for where you are and when you are engaging with that lecture can be flexible. And then in those hours, they tend to be more sort of like this, I guess, somebody talking into a camera and going through ideas, taking the odd question and stuff, but ultimately a lot of kind of laying the groundwork and the foundation for the understanding of the theories and the principles and the concepts to be discussed that week. And then later on in the week, we have a 2-hour seminar per module, per topic, sort of discuss these ideas that were kind of raised within the lecture and kind of build upon the weeks before. Yeah, and they tend to be, you know, smaller groups. Each seminar kind of has its own sort of culture, almost like little subculture in terms of the way they work and develop, and different cliques and so on. There is group work within the kind of assessment structure. So there's group presentations as part of the way that you get assessed, but also group work in terms of the learning process, sort of formally within the seminars, but also, as I say, a lot of students do like to work with others outside of the classrooms as well. And then in terms of the seminars, they're all face-to-face, so they're things that one has to be on campus for. But we make sure that they're all between Tuesday and Thursday, and that any one student is not in for 3 days. So they come in for 2 days. And what that allows for is effectively for other commitments that students might have, particularly international students who tend to have more commitments. It allows them to kind of be able to plan those commitments a bit more better. They know that there's sort of a time and a place where they need to be in Canterbury for 2 days of the week, and then for the rest of the week there's still an expectation of quite a considerable amount of study and work that goes on, but that study and work can be flexibly framed around other commitments, be it part-time jobs, be it sort of networking opportunities. It might be just kind of exercise. I wish I exercised more and maybe have more flexibility to exercise, but effectively it's sort of designed with that kind of flexibility, I suppose, in mind, and that kind of sort of structure such that you know, with most of the time is your time. And yes, a lot of the time that is your time as a student. We would like you to be learning and kind of developing your understanding of the ideas, but you get to structure that how you want to. So by condensing it into these 2 days of face-to-face delivery a week, it just allows for that flexibility for students to be able to sort of get involved in whatever they want to get involved with. Sorry, I looked at my notes and then and accidentally pressed the spacebar. So in terms of success stories, so a lot of our international students do tend to get part-time work. I don't personally, when I studied, I didn't have part-time work. I don't know how people manage it, but obviously, as I say, we do try and sort of commit for that. We have had some of our former students who's done sort of phenomenal work, typically in their business plan or their dissertation, but sometimes within the module publish. It's not really a big deal, but it's a big deal for academics. So it's important for me to publish, and a lot of our students who do publish kind of I don't know, take some pride into it. And there's also an awful lot of kind of career development, hopefully, within the capacity. So we tend to find a lot of our students sort of see this kind of uptick in terms of their career prospects and so on as a result of taking the courses. Here's one of our PhD students, actually. So this is a student, the quote here is a student who took our, I think, MSc. Yes, she took our MSc, and she's now studying for a PhD just because she liked us a lot, I suppose. So she's given us a quote. I learned a wealth of knowledge and made lifelong friends too. And like I said, I think it is those kind of friends, those networks, those kind of colleagues, peers that we develop during the study, which it certainly makes things for me. I was given both the freedom, as we just discussed, with a research topic, as well as advice on improvements and weaknesses. And I cannot express how amazing my tutors were to work. Chloe genuinely is lovely. I think I might have a cloud from Chloe on my radiator. She is a lovely person. This degree was the perfect mix of guidance and independence, and I would recommend it to anybody wanting to expand their knowledge of the business world. Thank you for a brilliant year. But yeah. We've also got career support in our library. So this is our career support, a sort of base in our library. One, because that's where we've got the space, but also the idea is that, if you go and study, that they're sort of there. They're just around the corner from the sort of coffee shop in the library as well. So they're kind of there to help and support. What we also do as part of careers, and we're doing this in a couple of weeks for our June starters from last year, our May starters from last year, is we embed careers into the delivery of the last term of teaching for all our students. Effectively, we kind of got a module that's kind of framed around employability and kind of thinking about those issues in the final term, in the final trimester. And then one of the things that we kind of do within that is we invite careers to kind of take some of those sessions and present sort of services they have on offer. The idea being that effectively that allows for the sort of transition from sort of getting towards the end of your degree and then thinking about employment opportunities wherever they may be. Obviously, our career services are probably a bit more orientated towards the UK, but not exclusively. And like I say, they're available for support anytime and anywhere. They're also available for support for alumni as well. It's not just for people presently studying, but they're also there for alumni. But we also embed them into our teaching in that final term for students. And like I said, they've got drop-in in the library and hours around that. Yeah, and they kind of help with the sort of things that I probably should know more about in terms of sort of thinking about employability and sort of almost how to utilize your degree coming to the end of it. They also have significant online presence as well in terms of, it's incredible how many things are sort of becoming automated, both in terms of the sort of advice that career service can provide, but also in terms of the things that we go through employment. So I mean, I don't know. So I got my graduate job in 2006, And I dare say a robot was doing part of the function of kind of recruitment and selection, at least in that first scale, in terms of kind of seeing an application and kind of working out whether the application was something to be shortlisted or whatever. But nowadays, of course, there's so much sort of AI and kind of automated decision making in careers that actually not only is it useful to then mean that some of the support we can offer is automated, but almost it has to be automated to sort of reflect the environment through which sort of graduate jobs in particular are obtained. But like there's amazing things like on this platform now where you can have a job interview with like you know just an AI, and it's just I'm somebody who doesn't like to pretend to have job interviews. I find the whole kind of thing a bit cringy and stuff. But if I was doing it to a robot, I don't think I'd mind it nearly as much. But yeah, fantastic support, and like I say, we do try and embed that support increasingly more towards the end of the course. Is there anything else I'd like to sort of say just by the end of it? No, I mean, like I say, just to repeat the messages that I said from the beginning, we are very lucky to recruit wonderful students. And the benefit of recruiting wonderful students is that it means that everybody benefits from that, both staff and fellow students. And I hope to continue to recruit wonderful students through all means, including these sort of discussions. But yeah, if you've got any questions for anyone, we're here to take them. Is that okay? Thank you, Takima.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Professor McManus. Really, really useful information. But just to clarify here, because my understanding is for May intake, we do have both MBA and MSc International Business available. I can see it's also reflected on the university's website. Is this accurate? Because we've already started receiving applications, I think, for both programs. Just want to make sure that
I mean, the general rule is if it's on the website, it is, but I had to go through the paperwork to do this, and I know we didn't go through the paperwork for the MSc. I'm 95% confident, and I'm very rarely 100% confident in anything, that we don't do the MSc as a June intake. But Richard is sort of eager to go.
I think we are this. My understanding is we are for this May-June intake doing both courses. Yeah,
I will investigate offline. I mean, from our perspective, it makes almost no difference because the first trimester for the first term, sorry, for students coming in May would look the same anyway. Yeah, so what you'd be studying independent of the form you ticked, because the kind of divergence doesn't happen before then, would be identically the same. But it was just a quirk of how it happened. I'll go away and check. It's not uncommon that the academic team learn last about these things. But yeah, I'll just add that to my to-do list now.
Yeah, I think it's been introduced really quickly, so I'm sure there's still something to probably catch up on. But it's great to know that there is no really difference anyway, and the first semester is a common one for both programs, which is great. But yes, we did receive information that both MBA and MSc International Business courses are available. So if you are a student or if you are our business partner and you do have applications where maybe students didn't make it for January intake, the great news is you can still defer to May intake. If you did receive unconditional offer letter for the course, whether it's MBA or MSc International Business, and you've also passed precast interview, that's amazing. It means you do not need to retake precast interview for May intake, so you can just proceed with the next stage of your application. And again, just to reiterate, for those who joined a little bit later, we already accept new applications via GAS Gateway. So if you're an educational agency, please submit those applications at the soonest. We will have 2 phases of deadline deadlines. And that's because we want to make sure those students who are already prepared with financial documents and everything, we want to prioritize their cases and issue their CAS at the soonest from the current CAS allocation. But obviously, as every university in the UK, they have to apply for the new CAS allocation. And then once that's available, we will then be announcing a second phase of deadlines. But for now, you would need to submit your applications by the 27th of January via GAS Gateway. If you're a student, please reach out to your educational agency as soon as possible and arrange whether it's an application or missing documents, which need to be submitted by the end of January, ideally. Please also book consultation sessions with my team on the ground so that we ensure you are prepared for your potential UKVI interview if it does take place, but also importantly, pre-CAS interview with the university. You've done enough research on CCCU. You have a full understanding on the financial side of things, your future career plans, etc., etc. And then just to reiterate on the payment deadline, again, if you have received your unconditional offer letter, then please feel free to go ahead and arrange your payment. It does take time to obviously make sure the payment is allocated, and then your CAS request tab is activated within CCCU Students Portal. As I said, if you already passed your pre-CAS interview for the same course for January intake, you don't have to retake it again. But if you haven't had it yet, please book it as soon as possible. If you have any technical issues with the portal, do reach out to my team on the ground. They would be happy to help, and we will ask admissions to book the interview for you manually and at the soonest. And the final deadline, CAS request deadline. So you would need to complete your CAS request by the 18th of February, the very latest. Again, the earlier you do it, the better, because your CAS will be prioritized, and it means you will receive your CAS in February itself to ensure you have plenty of time to apply for your visa, secure your visa, and then obviously travel to the UK once your visa is valid. So that's the message in terms of deadlines. Let's have a look at the questions we have received. And again, just to reiterate to everyone that the tuition fees remain the same as we had for previous intakes, January intake. So it's 15,500 overall. International scholarship is still available, which is 1,500, meaning your tuition fees are £14,000 after scholarship, which is really affordable. And as we know, Canterbury is a very affordable city to live in, and also very, very safe. And I can see the first question here: what's the installment plan for May intake? So similar to previous intakes, the first deposit you would need to pay towards your CAS letter and to obviously secure your place is £5,000. So once that's paid, you've passed your pre-CAS interview, you've submitted your CAS request, and you then received your CAS, applied for your visa. The remaining tuition fees would obviously need to be on your bank account for CAS and visa purposes. You can then pay in installments if you prefer, or you can pay the full outstanding fee prior to enrollment, which would be great. So you don't have to worry about the finances once you are enrolled. But if you are paying an installment, then 50% of your outstanding tuition fees would need to be covered prior to enrollment. So let's say you've paid £5,000 deposit, then 14 minus 5 is 9K. So 9K you divide by 2. So it's £4,500 you would need to pay in addition to your 5K deposit prior to enrollment. And then the rest you can pay prior to the next term. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you. Any scholarship? So it's exactly the same scholarship that we had for January intake, which is great. It's 1,500. You don't have to submit a separate application for that. It will be awarded to you automatically, provided you are an international student. Okay, study gap for undergrad and postgrad. Just to reiterate, for May intake, we will have 3 programs available only. They are all postgraduate level. So it's MBA, MSc International Business, and also Masters in Global Public Health, which we will have webinar on next week. But if you have applications, Samia, for undergraduate programs for September intake, that's great. we're already in the process of activating those programs within GAS Gateway, so you should be able to submit applications if you already have them. CCCU is normally quite flexible in terms of study gap, but any study gap would need to be justified, whether it's undergraduate, postgraduate. If your students maybe did some part-time work, volunteering, or studying, maybe preparing for IELTS, it needs to be specified within their CV. And obviously, if it's a long study gap, it needs to be also explained within personal statement, and all CVs need to be up to date. Okay. But other than that, they don't have specific study gap restrictions, but I'd say for postgrad up to 10 years, it should be okay. Anything above that, if they're strong candidates, feel free to still submit application. Just make sure that it's justified within CV and then explained within the personal statement. And obviously reference letters would need to be provided as well. And for undergrad, normally around 5 years is okay. But again, like I said, CCCU does exercise flexibility, especially if it's a good candidate. Okay, the difference between MBA and MSc International Business, I think Professor Richard already answered that. Is there anything maybe you would like to add, Richard, on that, in case if they missed?
No, not especially. Like I say, in the first term, for May intake, possibly also for September intake as well. How we teach it is confusing to me. It would be identical. It's just these two kind of pairs of modules. So the pair of modules that's for the MBA students is much more orientated towards making a case for an enterprise, a business, and kind of developing a business plan and I guess kind of justifying it and kind of making it credible. Whereas the MSc is more academic and sort of orientated towards academic studies and academic research and academic essay dissertation at the end of it. But otherwise, the remainder of the module, the remainder of the course, sorry, 120 credits, 2/3 is identical.
Perfect. Sorry. Yeah, I've just seen the second part of this question. I think their main concern is in case if they're asked this question during interview, whether it's a precast interview or maybe interview with the UKVI, with the Home Office, is there anything you would recommend students to elaborate on when they answer these questions, to why they chose MBA over MSc International Business, just to demonstrate that they have full understanding, I guess. Of
yeah, good point. Yeah, so
options.
I guess it's about sort of the motivations of what you would like to use that degree for, and I guess what the MBA allows for, because there is so much overlap, is it allows one to be able to use the kind of skills developed through the course in an entrepreneurial way, whereas the MSc is much more thinking about sort of working within existing international businesses and kind of being managers within that context. So in a sense, I guess there's more flexibility in the MBA, whereas the MSc is sort of much more orientated around sort of developing future managers of sort of organizations that already exist, and therefore, in theory, kind of having a specialism within that organization as well. So yes, I mean, the main thing I say, but I've never been in a UK VI interview, would be the MSc is more academic and kind of more rigorous in that respect, whereas the MBA is for more entrepreneurial, inspired and aspirational people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's really helpful. And also, I'm just thinking from the careers perspective, is there any advantage for students taking one course over another one? And also maybe from your experience, I would imagine these two courses do not restrict graduates in terms of the industries they can get into.
Exactly, yeah.
Right?
So there's no sort of distinction between the employability statistics from one versus the other, if that makes sense. Students sort of tend to sort of have similar outcomes coming out of it, at least immediately. We don't track it years after the event. I think culturally, MBAs have different interpretations in different countries. I think in the UK, MBAs are seen as kind of sort of, or kind of seen as quite corporate, right? I think, you know, back in the day, sort of 20, 30 years ago, MBAs were what really senior people within organizations have. So they kind of have that kind of kudos there. Whereas an MSc might be someone like me. Maybe I get more impressed with an MSc because it's sort of more academic and I'm academic. But yes, I think ultimately it's a postgraduate course, and therefore, if we're kind of seeing it through the lens of an employer, they just see that this person's done a postgraduate course in a UK institution, and that by itself holds most of the signal and most of the message for students moving on to employment.
Amazing. And I understand CCCU does not require work experience for MBA applicants. So they could be fresh graduates, or they could be more mature applicants as well.
Exactly. It's pre-experiential, but many of our students do, but that's just a coincidence. Many of our students do come with some sort of experience, going back to the idea of study gaps. But yes, we don't require it.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a really, really good point. All right. Mentioned a few of both programs. I think I've already done that, but just to reiterate, so it's 15,500, the same tuition fee as we had for January intake, and prior to that, £1,500 scholarship. So it's £14,000. Initial deposit is only £5,000 to secure your costs and to be able to apply for visa, but please ensure you obviously have sufficient funds to demonstrate for cost purposes and for visa purposes. So your outstanding tuition fees for the first year, and it's only 1 year course, and also your living cost as well. Initial deposit, we've already answered that. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have 2 sets of deadlines for the May intake. For those applicants who are fully prepared with their financial documents, meaning they would be able to already provide everything to secure their costs in February, you will need to submit your application before 27th of January, ideally by GAS Gateway. In case if not done so yet, please submit your students' applications via GAS Gateway. Please aim to provide a full package of documents just to make sure there is no back and forth, which obviously saves time for everyone. So we can then take your case forward to the next stage of the process. Once you've received your initial offer letter issued by in-uni admissions team on behalf of the university, you can then book a consultation session with my team on the ground so that you're prepared for pre-CAS interview as well. And then we will take your case further for the unconditional offer letter. Okay, so the quicker you provide all outstanding documents, the better. Okay, initial deposit we've already mentioned, it's £5,000. What's the cost acceptance? I'm not sure what you mean by that question, but the university still has plenty of courses available. So please don't worry about that. But like I said, we are trying to utilize our current cost allocation. And for those applicants who are ready with financial documents, we encourage them to provide everything by the end of this month so that they can receive their costs in February. Once new cost allocation is awarded to the university, then obviously we will announce the second set of deadlines for May intake. But we want to also ensure that students have plenty of time to apply for visa, just to avoid any hiccups with visa delays, and just to ensure that they arrive on campus on time and they don't miss tuition. Okay, please guide payment deadline. Okay, just to reiterate once again, so as per the first set of deadlines, you will need to arrange your payment by the 11th of February, the latest. If you've already applied, you've submitted outstanding documents, and you've received unconditional offer letter. And again, just to reiterate to everyone, you will only need to make a payment once you've received your unconditional offer letter from CCCU, meaning you have CCCU ID beginning with 1, which is stipulated within your unconditional offer letter itself. So do not pay until you receive unconditional. Conditional offer letter issued at the initial stage is issued by in-uni. So please do not use in-uni ID. Because we want to make sure that your payment is allocated correctly. So it needs to be done at the unconditional stage only. How long is the MBA program? So it's 12 months, Richard, right? So it's 1 year.
Yeah.
So if students start in May, when would they be graduating?
Graduating or finishing their course?
Well, both.
I think all our students graduate in September. So, oh no, I think all our students graduate in January. I get a bit confused with graduation. But
yeah, because it's a little bit late, so normally, yeah.
It's because we get to do it in the Canterbury Cathedral, which is behind you, as an image. I'm not proposing it's behind you. But there's only certain days we can get that. And I think most students prefer to graduate in the cathedral when we get the opportunity to, as opposed to, we do hold some graduation ceremonies throughout the year, but in a much more boring it's sort of in the building behind Richard, for example, again, in the digital world rather than necessarily in the real world. So I think it'll be January, but so May intake students, if they kind of pass through the course beautifully, will finish sort of the end of April 2026, I suppose. And what tends to happen is the final term, the talk component is only 5 weeks because you're going away and then doing your major project. So in terms of the kind of talk component, that will finish, I guess, the end of February 2026, and then you've got the remaining time to work on your final project, whether that be the business plan or the dissertation. But yeah, you should be finishing sort of end of April, beginning of May 2026, and then obviously it takes time for the marks and then the exam boards and so on. But yes, pretty much just 12 months spot on course.
Great. And just to reiterate, obviously, international students in the UK can apply for post-study work visa, which is graduate route, for 2 years after completing master's degree. Would they be able to do it as soon as they completed the program successfully? They don't need to wait for the actual graduation, right?
No, not at all. Yeah. I think the graduation is just this sort of ceremony thing. I think in terms of actual kind of formalities, all it is a nice time to have your photo taken. Otherwise, you get your written communication of your award degree award as soon as possible, and everything's framed around international students being able to apply for that postgraduate visa in time.
Perfect. All right. Some of the questions I can see are the same, which we already answered. International scholarship 1,500. There is no entry requirement for the international scholarship. Being international student already makes you eligible for the scholarship, and it will be reflected within your offer letter to start with. So you don't need to submit a separate application for this scholarship. Currently, we don't offer Masters of Research at CCCU, but that's something we are talking about with the university. So keep an eye for further updates. If there is anything, obviously, we will keep you posted. Accommodation, maybe Richard Venner, if you would like maybe to elaborate a little bit on accommodation, what sort of budget should students kind of have available for accommodation on campus?
Yeah, of course, Tigina, thank you. So we have a wide range of university accommodation, and the pricing ranges from typically about £120 per week up to £200 per week. All of the range of accommodation and all of the pricing is available to look at on our website. And of course, there are many advantages of living in university accommodation. One of them is you'll be extremely close to campus, extremely close to all of your classes and to university life.
Perfect. That's really useful. Thank you, Richard. And we do encourage students to book accommodation on campus. Very convenient, and also you save a lot of money. But if you do already have maybe family, let's say, living in London, and given it's a postgraduate course, so it's more mature applicants, Canterbury is only 1 hour from London, so you can still obviously reach easily by train, but you will need to allow obviously additional time. How many days do students need to attend classes, Professor Richard?
Only 2 days face-to-face delivery. For that reason, we do have quite a few students in London, and like you say, it's 60 minutes on the fast train, and yeah, it's both a potential of commuting, as Richard says, it's convenient to be close to campus, but also even where you're living on campus, nobody lives on campus, but you know, you might want those 5 days where you don't have to come in for face-to-face to be doing something else, for example, part-time jobs or whatever. So yeah, it's only 2 days for face-to-face delivery.
Understood. Perfect. Thank you. I consider as a comment the deadlines communicates very close. Yes, completely appreciate and agree with you, Mohammed Affan. It's a good point. So the reason we've given the initial set of deadlines is for those students who are prepared with financial documents so that they can actually benefit from the current CAS allocation. It doesn't mean we will stop accepting application post the initial set of deadlines. We will have the second set of deadlines announced later on, but obviously those students will only be able to receive CAS once the university secures their new CAS allocation, which hopefully will not take time, but it all depends obviously on the UKVI. It could happen in February, it could happen in March, it could happen in April. So those deadlines would be communicated at a later stage. But for now, if you do already have applicants with bank statements ready and everything else prepared, then for those, please submit applications by the 27th of January by CAS Gateway, and also any outstanding documents should be submitted by the end of this month, ideally, consultations arranged, and then we will take your students' cases forward, and we will try to obviously prioritize them for the CAS issuance in February itself, which is a great advantage for students because then they don't need to stress last minute applying for visas, etc. Okay, IELTS, waivers, English language proficiency. So the university does accept a number of various English tests available. So that includes obviously IELTS is the most common one, but they also accept other English proof like Pearson, like Oxford International test is also being accepted, which is popular. It's quite convenient, can be done online. Depending where you're coming from. For example, if you're coming from India, some of the boards are being considered as a proof of English. If you're from South, for example, you studied in some of the parts of India where would you consider your board as a proof of English. So again, do reach out to our regional teams on the ground so they would be able to explain a little bit further. If you studied master's degree in the UK already, so your master's is actually from the UK and you studied it in the UK or another English speaking country as per the UKVI list, maybe you studied in the US or in Australia, that could be also considered as a proof of English. So you do not need to attempt another English test. Okay, lots of other questions. I think they're the same. Interview preparation, again, reach out to our team on the ground so we'll be able to help you with your consultation and because interview preparation. Also, when it comes to the personal statement, it's really important that you state the correct course, correct, obviously, university, why you chose this university, why you chose this program, and how it will be benefiting your future career goals as well. UKVI. What types of options? Okay, so the start date is 27th of May. We do encourage students to arrive on campus by the start date just to make sure they don't miss induction. If you are facing any visa delays, obviously do let us know. We will look into your case individually. But for May intake, we haven't had students who apply for visas yet. If you're talking about January intake again, and you're currently facing UKVI delays, please reach out to our team on the ground. We will look into your case and we will talk to CCCU on that. Okay, this one has been answered. Okay, how many days does it take to issue offer letter? Currently, it's very, very straightforward. Once you've applied via CAS Gateway, your initial conditional offer letter is issued within 48 to 72 hours, so 2-3 working days, really. Once you've provided all outstanding documents, you've completed consultation session, once we've referred to your case to CCCU for unconditional, they normally issue unconditional within 48 hours, so within 2 working days. Currently, there are no delays. So as long as you've provided everything, but it might get a little bit busier closer to obviously the deadlines, I guess the second set of deadlines, but we're yet obviously to see, but do ensure you provide your missing documents at the soonest. Entry requirements, again, it depends on the country, but normally I think Richard also mentioned one of his slides, it's 2-2 equivalent in bachelor's degree, and then IELTS 6 overall, and obviously it needs to be B2, so not less than 5.5 in each section, or equivalent English test. Second chance, precast interview. So really important point here. You will need to ensure you attend your precast interview as it's been scheduled with the university. So please ensure that you go by the UK time. Normally the time that's specified within the precast interview invite is the UK, as per UK time zone. So please ensure you attend. If you're not able, do let the university know in advance, so that can be also maybe postponed to the next available slot. Please ensure you have good internet connection, that you use computer, so laptop, to attend the interview, because we saw some students attending through their mobile phone. They would normally face issues, which we obviously want to avoid. And you're normally given one chance to pass your precast interview, so please ensure you are prepared, and that's why we have consultation session, like I mentioned earlier, to ensure that you are better prepared for your precast interview. Deposit we've already mentioned. Any other English test? I think we've answered most of questions here. But in case if we missed any of your questions, I'm just cautious of time here, please reach out to our team on the ground. We'd be happy to help. Thank you so much once again, Professor McManus. Really informative webinar. And thank you, Richard, for your help as always to organize this webinar. Stay tuned for the next webinar. It will be next week on Wednesday, 12 p.m. UK time. We will be talking about Masters in Global Public Health starting in May as well. Thank you all and have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.